What happened inside this Northwest Houston apartment has left neighbors in shock.
It's just like painful, I guess. Like my heart hurts. I could say that.
A little one just watched somebody shoot his mother. And instead of freezing up the way most of us would, he ran. He ran straight to a bus stop full of strangers, chest heaving, begging anybody standing there to please come and save her.
Who called 911 after a child went running to the bus stop saying something unthinkable.
And this is the man who did it, calmly walking himself into a police station hours later like he had all the time in the world. But before we get into Jacqueline's story, before we get into how the whole system practically opened the door for this to happen, let's start with a different woman in a different state, because her story is where this pattern really shows its face. Her name was Stephanie Dominique Ingram, and if you ever knew her, or even just watched her online for 5 minutes, the first thing you remember is that smile. She was 30 years old, a mother of 4 out of Aubrey, Texas, a small town up in Denton County, where the population is only a few thousand people, and everybody kind of knows everybody else's business. The folks who loved her did not call her pretty or funny at first.
They called her a ray of sunshine, and they meant it in the deepest way, because Stephanie carried the kind of light that made other people feel like just being near her. She was the type to be up in her kitchen singing and dancing with her babies, filming it, laughing at herself, and then sending that same energy out to strangers online who logged on that day feeling low. She was somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's granddaughter and niece and best friend, and she wore all of those roles like they were the most natural thing in the world. And you have to keep one detail in your mind the whole time because it makes everything that comes later so much heavier. Her youngest child was only 4 weeks old when this happened. 4 weeks. So picture the real weight of her days. A brand new baby that needs feeding through the night, 3 older kids depending on her, a household resting on her shoulders, and this woman still finding the energy to smile into a camera and pour love out to people she had never even met. But to understand how a life this full got cut so short, you have to go back. Because Stephanie had already lived through one nightmare long before the second one ever came knocking. Before the man in this story, she was tangled up with the father of her children, and by every account, that relationship was built on nothing but control. He watched her every single move, went digging through her phone, kept tabs on who she was talking to and where she was going, and one piece at a time he cut her off from the very people who could have pulled her out. That is how these men operate. They do not start with their fists. They start by making you feel like the world outside them is not safe, until you look up one day and realize you are completely alone with the only person who has ever really hurt you.
And in her case, it did turn physical, in a way she was brave enough to talk about out loud. There was one moment that tells you exactly how much fear she was living under. She locked herself inside her own car just to get away from him and avoid another fight. And while she was sitting right there behind the glass, he smashed the windows and busted the mirror. She put it on her page afterward and was not doing it for attention. She was doing it almost like a public service, a warning for other women who might see themselves in her.
This is what happens when you don't want to talk to him. This is what happens when you lock yourself in a car to be away from him. Yeah.
She found the strength to report him, and that report is what led to his arrest, and that arrest is what finally gave her enough room to breathe and get out. People who have never lived it always underestimate that part. Leaving is not one clean decision you make one time. It is 100 small, terrifying choices strung together, every one of them made by somebody who is scared and tired and still has kids to feed. And Stephanie made every last one of them. Then she started rebuilding, and she used her platform to pour all that pain out where other survivors could catch it, turning her worst days into a little bit of light for women walking the same road.
Okay, y'all, so I'm okay. I had to calm down. That was a lot earlier. But, ladies, just know that's not love. That's not love. I didn't do nothing to deserve that. I didn't even get out my car. I stayed in the car so we won't be fighting. And still got my windows busted and my mirror. So, yeah. It's time for a new beginning. Now he calling and texting, talking about he loves me. That's not love. Amongst everything else. The nigga dogged me, y'all. He dogged me. And it's okay, though. It's all right. It's a new day tomorrow, and I'm going to take it for what it is. Y'all have a good night, though. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow.
That is a woman teaching other women in real time, out of her own bruises. And when she talked about the pain of it all, she did not sugarcoat what it felt like to carry everything by herself. She spoke openly about the weight of being a single black mother doing it all alone, about how heavy it was to protect her kids, run a household, and heal from a man all at the same time, with no real safety net underneath her. She had cared about somebody who was supposed to protect her, and instead he became the very thing she needed protection from. And that kind of betrayal leaves a mark that does not just fade because you filed a police report. So she leaned on the one place that felt safe, which was her little corner of the internet, and she built something real there. She was not just posting for likes, she was reaching out to other survivors, women who had been choked and stalked and controlled just like her, and together they formed this quiet community of people who understood each other without having to explain a thing.
That is the version of Stephanie the world should remember. A woman who took the worst thing that ever happened to her and tried to turn it into a lifeline for somebody else. She was described by the people closest to her as a great mother above everything, the kind who danced with her kids in the living room just to keep the mood light, who folded them right into her videos so her joy and their joy became the same thing. And here's what I really want you to hold on to, because the internet has this ugly habit of turning victims into headlines and forgetting they were people first. In between all that heaviness, Stephanie was still just a regular person living a regular life, the exact same way you and I do. One day she is on her page asking her followers for old home remedies because her tooth was killing her, trying warm salt water, trying peroxide, trying ice on her jaw, trying anything.
And also, if y'all know of any more, like, little old remedies or whatever, like, I tried literally everything. I did the warm water and salt. I gargle with peroxide. I gargle with that fucking strong-ass mouthwash, the, like, golden kind. I've taken Tylenol, ibuprofen, migraine medicine. It eases it when I put an ice pack on my jaw and I put ice in my mouth. And it kind of, that makes it feel better, but it's like, then my stomach starts hurting because I'm already drinking a lot of water and I'm still eating ice all day just to be able to cope a little bit. If y'all know any other thing, oh yeah, and I did the Advil gel on my tooth. Like, somebody said try BC. Now I'm going to try that when I go to the store. I don't have one, but let me know if anybody see this. All of my
Hold that picture of her close, because the man who walked in next was going to take every bit of it away from her. And he was going to do it for the oldest, saddest reason there is. He could not stand to watch her get free. Somewhere in the early part of 2023, Stephanie met Anthony Jontrell Thornton, a 32-year-old man. And at first, he looked like the complete opposite of everything she had just escaped. He came across as protective, attentive even, the kind of man who knows exactly what to say to a woman who is still bleeding on the inside. She had crawled through hell to get here, so a soft place to land felt like an answered prayer. They moved fast, real fast, moving in together within a matter of weeks, and for a little while it probably felt like the fresh start she had earned with all that pain. She even spoke about him online like he was the man of her dreams, somebody who had promised her he was different, that he had never put his hands on a woman, that with him she was finally safe. But the same red flag she had run from the first time came creeping right back in, just wearing a brand new face. He started going through her phone, questioning her about who she talked to, pushing her away from certain friends, and offering to handle her money for her, what sounds like a man stepping up until you understand it is just control dressed in nice clothes. Her friends saw it happening. They recognized the pattern repeating itself. But this is the cruelest trap in all of it.
When people tried to gently warn her, she defended him. Because that is exactly what this cycle does to your mind. It teaches you to guard the very thing that is slowly killing you, and it makes you feel like anyone who criticizes him is the enemy. Then came the moment that should have ended the whole thing right there. On May 10, 2023, Thornton was arrested in Denton County and charged with assault on a family or household member by impeding breath or circulation. Read that charge slowly, because in plain English, that means he choked somebody. And that specific charge is one of the loudest sirens in the entire world of domestic violence, because strangulation is one of the strongest signs that a partner will one day go all the way and kill you. The record does not put a name on the victim, but the timing lands right in the middle of their relationship, and Stephanie reportedly forgave him and stayed. I'm not standing here to judge her for that, and neither should you, because forgiveness inside an abusive relationship is not weakness, it is survival math being done under pressure by a woman who has been trained her whole life to smooth things over and make it work. While all of this was quietly falling apart, Stephanie was carrying the crushing weight of being a single mother to 4 children. So she made a bold move for herself. On August 17, 2023, she launched an OnlyFans account, and for her, it was never really about the money by itself. After years of somebody else controlling her body, her time, and her choices, this was Stephanie grabbing the steering wheel back with both hands. She walked her followers through the whole thing, the tax paperwork, the banking setup, the nervous little thrill of it all, and when that very first payment finally cleared her account, she was genuinely, openly happy about it.
Okay, so yeah, the update. The OnlyFans page is going up. Like, it's going up. Me and this baby daddy with this whole back and forth shit, like, I don't know, because y'all already know. Now he want to be nice and all that stuff. Like, is it going to last? Is it going to last? Like, we're going to see. You know what I'm saying? We're going to see. Y'all know how that type of stuff go. But subscribe. Look for the link in the bio, because I never thought I would be doing it, and I'm doing it. And it is a little complicated because, first of all, you got to do like a W-9, and I was just like, I don't know what to put on this doggone paper, but anyways, I did it. And then you got to do your banking and stuff like that, and then wait about 24 to 48 hours for it to get cleared, for you to be able to pull your money off, which I just did my first little pull off today. And I was happy. I thought I was going to get the whole amount, but it didn't give me the whole amount. It gave me basically half. And then the rest, it says pending. So I'm guessing in the next couple of days, that'll be done pending. But I got that. People supportive, people you think when I support you or whatever the case may be, they support you. It's a whole lot of people there to waste my time, but it's part of the job. It's part of the job, but it's good. It's good. I'm happy right now. And y'all know my freaking TV literally fell off the wall when I was just on FaceTime talking. So I got this one up here. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully this one don't fall too, but yeah, that's that. So, if y'all want to know something, y'all can ask me or whatever, but I'm okay for right now.
That is a woman celebrating a paycheck she earned on her own terms. And that is the exact thing Thornton could not sit with. His jealousy went from a low simmer straight to a rolling boil. He told her to delete the account, accused her of cheating, accused her of neglecting him and the family, and guilted her every single way his mind could come up with. But this time, Stephanie did something new. She stood on it. She had already handed over her freedom once to keep a man happy, and she flat out refused to do it a second time. On the night of August 19th, right after she posted about how well the account was doing, an argument blew up between them and rolled straight into the early hours of the next morning. Neighbors in that quiet Savannah neighborhood said they could hear the raised voices and they could hear her refusing him. And then, around 1:19 in the morning on August 20th, Thornton grabbed a gun and shot Stephanie in the head and neck, and then he unalived himself right there in their own bedroom on Forsyth Drive. Here is the detail that guts you every time you hear it. When police finally arrived on that welfare check, they found the front door standing wide open, the two of them gone, and Stephanie's 4-week-old infant lying unharmed in another room. That baby slept clean through the end of its whole world. The Tarrant County medical examiner ruled Stephanie's death a homicide and his a self-inflicted death, both from gunshot wounds. And because he took himself out in the same breath, there would never be an arrest, never be a trial, never be a single day where anybody stood in front of a jury and answered for what he did to her. Her name now sits inside the Texas Council on Family Violence honoring report. One more woman used to teach the rest of us the warning signs that always seem so obvious once it is too late. 4 children woke up that morning without a mother. She was 30 years old, and everything she was reaching for was the simple right to stand on her own. Investigators leaned on the neighbors who heard the fighting, on the digital trail she left behind celebrating her account, and on the records of the prior violence, and everything pointed to the same story: a controlling man who could not handle a woman getting free. Authorities called it an isolated domestic matter with no threat to the wider public, which is the cold official language for a private horror that unfolds behind one closed door. Down in that little town of Aubrey, the community was left shaken, and people started calling louder for real domestic violence resources because everybody could feel that the warning signs had been sitting right there in plain sight the whole time. A fundraiser went up for her kids and later came down. Tributes poured in online, and her name got folded into the kind of advocacy work that tries to make sure the next Stephanie gets out alive.
That is our first woman. Our second lived hundreds of miles away in Houston in a completely different situation with a completely different man, but she reached that same breaking point Stephanie did, the exact moment where a woman finally decides that enough is enough. The difference this time is that her ending was caught on a security camera, timed almost down to the second, and it happened right in front of her own babies. Jacqueline Wilson was 32 years old, born on January 16, 1992 in Huntsville, Texas, and just like Stephanie, she was a mother of 4 doing her absolute best to hold an entire world together on her own. Her people remembered her for a warm smile and a laugh that could fill a whole room, the kind of woman who would actually stop and listen when you were going through something, who had a way of making the people around her feel like they mattered. Her 4 kids, remembered in the family's own tribute as Lance, Aaliyah, Jordan, and Cash, were her whole reason for breeding. Her mother, Denise Bibbs, put it as plain as it gets. Her daughter turned heads. She was the life of the party, and she deserved so much more out of this life than what she got handed. Jacqueline had grown up around the Huntsville area before building her life down in Houston, and by every account, she was the glue for the people who loved her, the one who checked on everybody else even when her own world was on fire. And her mother did not just love her from a distance. Denise had folded this man Ruffin into her own family, had opened her home to him and treated him like a son, which makes what came later feel like a double betrayal, once against her daughter and once against her own kindness. She would later say her daughter had never been in a relationship that bad before, that in all her years she had never watched Jacqueline get pulled under like this. That is a mother telling you she saw the danger with her own eyes and could not pry her daughter loose from it, which is the most helpless feeling a parent can carry. The man in her life was Howard Devin Ruffin, 39 years old, her partner of roughly 5 years. And to really feel the weight of this story, you have to sit with how long the warning lights have been flashing. This was not a man who just snapped one random morning. This was a slow-motion tragedy that damn near everybody around Jacqueline could see rolling toward her, and nobody could see it clearer than her own mama. Denise had welcomed this man into her home, had treated him like a son, and even after all of that, she still knew deep in her gut that it could only get worse.
She had told her daughter over and over to leave him, that it was never going to get better, only worse, and she was speaking from a place of love and pure fear at the same time. And the paper on this man backs up every ounce of that fear. Ruffin walked around with a documented history of family violence, including an earlier conviction up in Walker County for assaulting a family member, and for that one he served a grand total of 3 days. 3 days! But the incident that should have changed the entire course of this story happened in October of 2022, when Ruffin was hit with a felony charge, assault of a family member as a second offender, and the victim was Jacqueline herself. What the court record says she went through that day is genuinely hard to read.
According to those records, he was punching her in the face with his fists while he was driving the car, and then he started choking her, pressing down on her neck and cutting off her breath. She had bruises all over her body when help finally reached her. And to save her own life, Jacqueline jumped out of that moving car, flagged down strangers driving by, and begged them for help. Sit in that for a second. Staying inside a moving vehicle with this man felt more survivable to her than the open road did. She got taken to a hospital, but like so many women trapped in these situations, she was frightened and unsure, and at the time, she did not fully push the case forward. Prosecutors even asked the court for a protective order on her behalf, and she never ended up getting one. And I keep coming back to that word, choking, because it is the same siren that was blaring in Stephanie's story too. When a man puts his hands around a woman's throat, the research is brutally clear that her odds of one day being killed by him shoot way up. It is one of the single biggest predictors that a relationship is heading toward a body. So this was not a gray area. A man had already choked Jacqueline once, badly enough to leave bruises all over her and sent her leaping out of a moving car, and the paper trail proving it was already sitting in a courthouse. Everything that was needed to see this coming was already written down. It just needed somebody, somewhere in the system, to actually act on it before it was too late. So now there is a felony warrant out for this man, for choking the mother of his children while doing 70 down the road. And this is where you start to watch a whole system fumble the ball in slow motion. He was not scooped up right away in Harris County. That warrant just sat there, active and ignored, waiting on somebody to act. And this is the same man that neighbors would later say they personally heard threaten Jacqueline's life in the final days before she died. That is who she was living with. That is who her mother kept begging her to leave. For about 5 years, this relationship had run hot and cold, described by the family as volatile from the jump, the kind of on-again, off-again cycle where the good stretches keep pulling you back in right before the bad ones get worse. News outlets covering the case would go on to describe Ruffin as a man with a lengthy criminal history and multiple convictions for aggravated assault, all of them tied to the women he dated. In other words, this was not new behavior he suddenly discovered with Jacqueline. This was a pattern he had carried from one relationship to the next, and she happened to be the one standing in front of it when it finally turned deadly.
And in the last week of her life, that is exactly what Jacqueline did. She ended it. She put him out for good. She gathered his belongings and threw them out of her apartment. And I need you to understand that this is the single bravest and most dangerous thing a woman in her position can possibly do. Because the moment a woman finally leaves is the moment men like this feel their control slipping away for good, and that is precisely when they become the most lethal. Everything you are about to hear happened for one reason and one reason only. She finally chose herself. To really grasp how avoidable this whole thing was, you have to follow the paperwork and the pocket change, because that is exactly where Jacqueline got failed by the people who were supposed to protect her. Remember that felony warrant just sitting there collecting dust? In late April or May of 2023, Ruffin got picked up all the way down in Maverick County near the border on that same Harris County warrant. This was the moment. This was the chance to hold a man wanted for choking his girlfriend. And instead of holding him, Maverick County turned around and released him on a $7,500 bond, reportedly treating it far more lightly than the felony it actually was back in Harris County. And then came the failure that advocates are still furious about to this day. Harris County was never properly notified about any of it, a communication breakdown that dragged on for roughly 16 months. Think about what that means. For over a year, a man wanted for strangling the mother of his kids was just out here walking around free, with nobody watching him and nobody enforcing a single condition. All because two counties in the same state could not manage to talk to each other. Harris County did not even find out about that bond situation until about 1 week before the murder. 1 week. When the case finally did land in front of a Harris County judge on September 25, 2024, in the 180th District Court, the bond was not raised. It stayed sitting at that same $7,500 in spite of his whole ugly history. And so he walked right back out of custody around September 30th. Now do the math on that timeline slowly, because it is the whole tragedy in a nutshell. This man was a free man again, roughly 2 days before he killed her. In those final days, one of Jacqueline's neighbors watched him come apart at the seams. She saw Jacqueline throwing his things out on that Monday, and then on the day before the shooting, she saw him sitting in the dark inside an SUV in the parking lot, just watching the apartment, like a predator waiting on prey. She said the feeling she got walking past him was so bad, she rushed away and could not even explain it. And in the week leading up to all of this, that same neighbor says she heard Ruffin say in his own words that he was going to kill her. The signs were not hidden, they were loud, and they were everywhere. Then came the morning of October 2nd, 2024, right around 8 o'clock. A camera mounted near her unit at the Willow Green Apartments caught the entire thing. Ruffin walks into the apartment, the door swings shut, and within a few seconds you hear his voice, then hers, then a single gunshot, and then 8 more, 9 in total, while Jacqueline screams. And then he simply steps back out and strolls off like a man who did not just erase an entire family. From the moment he walked in to the moment he walked out, the whole thing lasted about 20 seconds. 20 seconds to undo 5 children's whole lives. 2 of her babies were inside that apartment and saw the entire thing unfold. And what one of those children did next is the part of this story that will stay with you forever. Her young son, only around 6 years old, ran out to the bus stop, found 2 women standing there waiting, and told them the unthinkable thing he had just watched. Listen to one of those women describe the moment that little boy reached her.
At that, we just took off running, like, show us the apartment where you stay, and then he brought us to the apartment right over there. And we went in there, and she was just gasping for air.
Those 2 complete strangers ran into that apartment, grabbed towels, pressed them against her wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, and called 911. And one of Jacqueline's own children sat right there beside his mother the whole time. They did everything 2 human beings on this earth could possibly do for her, and it still was not enough. Paramedics pronounced her dead right there at the scene.
That's what you call somebody who doesn't have a heart, who's heartless, who doesn't care. And I just think, like I said, it's a coward move.
And here's where Jacqueline's case goes somewhere Stephanie's story never could, because this time there was an arrest. Hours after the shooting, Ruffin reached out to police, said he wanted to turn himself in, sat down and gave detectives a statement, and got charged with murder by the Harris County District Attorney, with prosecutors this time fighting hard to deny him any bond whatsoever. The same man who slid through the cracks for 16 months was finally in a cell, staring down a murder charge that carries the possibility of life behind bars. There was no dramatic manhunt, no standoff. Detectives had built the case fast off the surveillance video, the neighbors, the bystanders, and the terrified account of a child, and Ruffin walked himself in and talked. Prosecutors then went straight at the judge to deny him any bond at all, determined not to let the same low number that failed Jacqueline once fail her memory a second time. And this is where advocates started raising their voices, because to them, this was not just one tragedy, it was a preventable one, with a clear paper trail. People who work these cases for a living pointed straight at the 16-month gap and started asking the questions that still do not have good answers. Where exactly was this man during all that time? Who was supposed to be supervising him? How does a felony warrant for choking a woman just evaporate between 2 counties in the same state? Those questions are the reason Jacqueline's name kept getting pulled into bigger conversations about bail and about counties actually talking to one another, because everybody who looked closely could see that the failure was not just one bad decision, it was a whole chain of them lined up back to back.
We're supposed to face a judge today on a separate assault charge involving the same victim, identified in court documents as Jacqueline Wilson.
Her mother, Denise, has said out loud what everybody watching was already thinking: that the system failed her daughter, that this could have been prevented, and that she should still have her child today. She has vowed to sit in that courtroom for every single hearing, so this man has to look up and see her face every time he walks in, and she is the one now raising all 4 of Jacqueline's kids. The case even climbed all the way up the political ladder. In May of 2025, Texas Governor Greg Abbott pointed to it directly while pushing for bail reform, laying out how a convicted man on a $7,500 bond killed Jacqueline just 2 days after being released from jail in front of her kids. Her death became a talking point inside the Capitol, and there is a bitter kind of pain in that because no policy debate anywhere brings a mother back home to 4 children waiting on her. That makes 2 women now, both of them mothers of 4. Both of them killed the very instant they found the courage to leave. Our third and final woman is different from the first 2 in one enormous way. Her husband was not just some jealous boyfriend nobody had ever heard of. He was a man the entire city thought had turned his life all the way around. A man who went on Facebook and preached to people about becoming better. A self-made rapper fresh out of prison. And the horror he left behind was on a level that is genuinely hard to put into words. Shauna Roy was 41 years old, out of Saginaw, Michigan, and out of all 3 of these women, she may have carried the biggest heart of them all. Her best friend of 30 years, Dominique Vaughn, first met her way back in a 6th grade science class, and the way she described Shauna will stick with you. She would help absolutely anybody, always greeting people with a warm "Hey, honey," always sending out those good morning texts just to let the people she loved know she was thinking about them and hoping their day went right. She worked hard at Next Tier Automotive. She was raising 2 sons who were around 16 and 7 years old, and she was chasing a real dream of opening an adult foster care facility so she could take care of folks who had nowhere else to turn. She even ran her own giveaways for the homeless during those brutal Michigan winters, handing out hats and gloves to strangers freezing on the street. That was Shauna to her core, a woman who genuinely believed that everybody, no matter what they had done, deserved a real second chance. She had been building toward that dream her whole life. She came up as the youngest of 3 siblings in a tight, supportive Saginaw family, graduated from Saginaw High School back in the year 2000, where she cheered and served on student council, then went on to study caregiving and social work at Delta College before earning a certificate from a medical school in 2013. Every step she took pointed in the same direction, toward taking care of people, because that was simply who she was. And the friendship with Dominique was not some casual thing either. It ran 30 years deep, all the way from that 6th grade science class through every milestone of their adult lives. Close enough that Shauna stood as a bridesmaid in Dominique's wedding just a couple of years before all of this. Her 2 sons are now being raised by their maternal grandmother, which is its own quiet heartbreak, because the woman who dreamed of caring for everybody else is no longer here to care for her own boys.
Now, on the other side of this was a man whose re-entry into the free world was rockier than the highlight reel he posted online ever let on. Tony's release had actually been delayed by COVID surges inside the prisons, and in a letter from that time, he sounded almost broken, asking if he had been left to die in there. When he finally did get out, he ran straight into the same brick walls that trip up so many returning citizens. He got defrauded out of thousands of dollars while trying to buy a home in Flint, turned away because of his record, unstable and scrambling. None of that excuses a single thing he did, but it is the real backdrop behind all that Facebook bravado, a man loudly performing success while privately coming apart, and a woman with a soft heart who wanted to believe the performance was the truth. And that beautiful belief in second chances is the exact thing that pulled her into this. She met Tony Roy online in 2020, back while he was still locked up, and she was drawn in by the story he was selling, a man who claimed he had reformed himself behind those prison walls and come out changed.
Now, I need you to really understand who Tony Roy was underneath that story, because his record is honestly staggering to look at. This was a man with at least 17 felony convictions, and none of it was petty little stuff either. We are talking about armed robberies stacked one on top of another, assault with intent to rob while armed, kidnapping, and weapons charges going all the way back to 1998. Some of those armed robbery sentences ran 8 to 20 years apiece. He stood 6'6", weighed around 270 pounds, went by the street name Tree, and he spent the better part of 2 whole decades cycling in and out of prison. But when he finally came home, he did not come home quiet and humble. He came home loud, selling a brand new image of himself to anybody who would watch. He got on Facebook and told the whole world how he had built himself up, saved his money, and become a real businessman while everybody else had counted him out and left him for dead.
I came home $100,000 up, $100,000 up. I came home with this, right? Because I saved my money. I always been a businessman, and I studied what businessmen do. I watched my brothers.
He talked about God constantly, about being blessed, about how he was going to take care of everybody around him now that he was out. He even ran his own little talk show on Facebook every single Wednesday, where he positioned himself as this reformed, thoughtful man trying to heal his community and talk openly about mental health among black men. He would sit there for an hour preaching about accountability, about men needing to do better, and he would even put his own name in his own mouth as the prime example of a man working on himself. Listen closely, because the man saying these exact words is the same man this whole story is about.
Help Dick. I can't come in and be no leech, bro. You know that ain't how I roll. But I love y'all, man. Whole team, man. We strong, man. Everybody strong, man. Ski, we strong, bro. Heavy, we strong, bro.
And the music was a huge part of the image he was selling. Tony billed himself as a rapper who had sharpened his skills behind bars, calling himself a legend of the craft from his prison days. And he was hyping up a big welcome home party where he planned to grab the mic, host the whole thing, and finally show the city what he had. He told his followers he had a lot to offer, that he was about to go big, and to a lot of people watching, this looked like the story you want to root for. A man who did his time, found God, saved his bread, and came home ready to give back. That is the picture Shauna fell for, and honestly, it is the picture a lot of good people would have fallen for, because it hits every note we have been taught to celebrate. Sounds like a genuinely changed man, right? That is the whole entire trick of it, and that is what makes this one so chilling. The marriage started on that same wave of hope. He spoke about their shared future, about building something together. And for a woman who believed so deeply in second chances, marrying a man everybody said had turned it around must have felt like proof that her whole philosophy about people was right. Behind that camera and behind all that preaching, the reality was something completely different. And Shauna was the one living inside that reality every single day. They got married on July 22nd, 2022, less than a month after his parole, moving just as fast as Stephanie and her boyfriend did. And just like the others, the fairy tale did not last anywhere near as long as the vows promised. Behind those closed apartment doors, Tony was the exact same controlling man his record had always warned everybody he was. He demanded to know her every single move, accused her of cheating, and slowly cut her off from her friends and family, running the same isolation playbook we have now watched play out in all 3 of these stories. Dominique watched her bright, bubbly, giggly best friend slowly go quiet and heavy, watching that light dim right in front of her over those final months. And there were much bigger alarms going off too. In March of 2023, while he was still on parole, Tony was charged with aggravated domestic violence and a whole stack of gun offenses involving another woman, though that case ended up dismissed in April when the victim would not testify. The state responded by strapping a GPS tether on him. And then in May of 2023, Tony himself was the one who filed for divorce. By the middle of that summer, Shauna had made up her mind. She was leaving, going back home to Saginaw, where her family was waiting with open arms to catch her and help her rebuild. Friends said she was only about 72 hours away from getting out for good. 72 hours. That is how agonizingly close this woman was to her freedom. The last time Dominique laid eyes on her best friend was at dinner on July 7th, 2023. After that night, the texts coming from Shauna's phone stopped sounding anything like her, using phrasing that felt cold and off. Around July 11th, Tony was officially listed as a parole absconder, which lines up right with when police believe Shauna was actually killed. And here is the single coldest detail in this entire case. On July 12th, Tony went live on Facebook, standing shirtless in the kitchen, bragging about finally getting his ankle tether removed and promoting a big welcome home party where he was going to unveil his rap skills to the city. Investigators believe his wife may have already been dead in that very same apartment while he stood there smiling and rapping into that camera.
For days, Shauna's family kept begging for welfare checks. Burton police came out to the apartment more than once, and every single time Tony was vague and evasive, telling officers he simply had not seen her. Then, on the evening of July 15th, after her family called yet again, this time reporting a terrible smell coming from the unit, officers finally went inside. And what they discovered there is one of the most disturbing scenes you will ever hear a reporter describe on the news.
They discovered 41-year-old Shauna Roy had been completely dismembered. Her body parts had been placed in garbage bags and set in the bathtub. It was then when officials determined her husband, 44-year-old Tony Roy, had killed her, mutilated her body, and left it in the apartment.
This gentle woman, who spent her whole life feeding the homeless and sending good morning texts and dreaming about caring for the forgotten, had been killed and then dismembered, her remains stuffed into garbage bags and left in the bathtub by the very husband who stood on Facebook preaching to strangers about being a better man. Her ID, her phone, and her purse were later found sitting inside his vehicle, tying him directly to it. Tony ran, and a warrant went out for open murder and mutilation. 2 nights later, on July 17th, Michigan State Police finally caught up with him in Detroit during a traffic stop. During that stop, he first pointed a gun at himself, and then he turned it on a female passenger sitting in the car, using her like a human shield. The second he aimed that gun at her head, troopers opened fire. You can hear the raw panic of that whole moment in the footage. Tony was killed right there on the scene, and that passenger survived with only minor injuries from the shattered glass. So just like it went with Stephanie, there would never be a trial here either. The man who took Shauna's life ended up answering to nobody except the very end of it. And there is a sense from those close to the investigation that Tony understood exactly how his story was going to end once police closed in. That a man with a record like his and a warrant for murder and mutilation was never planning to walk out of that stop in handcuffs. He forced the outcome, and a woman who had nothing to do with any of it nearly lost her life being used as his shield. Now, if you are sitting there thinking a paroled killer marrying a good woman and then turning on her is some rare, one-in-a-million kind of thing, I want to leave you with one more Michigan story before we go, because it proves this exact pattern has run its course before, right in the same state. His name was Gregory Green. All the way back in 1991, Green stabbed his pregnant wife to death, later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, and got sentenced to 15 to 25 years. And when he eventually came up for parole, community figures stepped up and vouched for him, swore up and down that he was a reformed and remorseful man, including a pastor who lobbied hard for his release. The most gutting part of the Green case is that the very pastor who fought so hard to get him out of prison was the father of the woman he married, which means a man used his own good name and his own daughter's life to vouch for somebody who had already killed a pregnant partner once before. The regret he had to live with after is unimaginable. And that is exactly why these stories matter beyond the headlines, because they keep showing us that a smooth story of redemption told by the right person at the right time can quietly override every red flag standing right in front of us. So look hard at what quietly connects all 3 of these women. Stephanie chased her own independence and got killed for it. Jacqueline finally found the strength to leave and got killed for it in front of her own babies.
Shauna was only 72 hours from freedom when the husband who preached about change turned into a monster. Every single one of them saw the warning signs with their own eyes, and in most of these cases, the people around them saw them too, and it still was not enough to stop it. That is the part we all have to actually sit with and not look away from. The most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship is almost never the beginning, it is the leaving. If somebody you love is caught in a situation that sounds anything like these, please do not sit around waiting for it to get better on its own, because every one of these stories is telling you loud and clear that it does not. Believe them the very first time they tell you that something feels wrong. If any part of this story reached you, drop a comment down below. Not for us and not for the algorithm, but because somebody scrolling past this video right now might be exactly 72 hours from their own way out, and the words you leave might just be the thing that gives them the push to finally take it.